and welcome to another episode of the Let's Talk Marvel Fan Theories podcast. I'm Taylor.
And I'm Katie, and we're two sisters and borderline obsessed Marvel fans who have been following the Marvel Cinematic Universe closely for years. And now we want to share our MCU discussions with you.
We chat about our own predictions and theories, plus some of our favorites from online, and our reactions to all of the Marvel content that's considered MCU canon, including the Disney Plus shows and the movies, as well as the Marvel news you need to know. All right, guys, we have a very special episode for you today. As you know, we typically do predictions episodes right before a film comes out, but I think we can all agree that the hype around Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness is as big, if not bigger, than Infinity War, Endgame, No Way Home. I mean, the rumor mills are exploding. People are just going nuts online, especially after that new trailer that dropped during the Super Bowl. So we wanted to do a special pre-predictions episode just based on the most recent trailer to talk about the top 5 theories that we think are the most important coming out of the most recent trailer. So Katie, I'll let you take it away with your first thoughts on the first one we're going to tackle.
Okay, so the very first thing that I think everybody noticed in this newer trailer was the appearance, or partial appearance, of Professor X and the Illuminati. Now, obviously, this is something we haven't seen before. It's very likely it's not in our direct timeline, since when you have something like that, you kind of would have to assume that it's more prevalent than, than anything, and I don't know if we would have necessarily never heard of it before. But what's interesting is it actually looks like Strange is, arrested by the Illuminati. So that's another reason for me. I'm kind of thinking he's going places he might not be supposed to be going. And instead, some people are like, no. But I think it's interesting because one of the biggest things that a lot of fans, and I know from the get-go of watching this trailer, and this was my thing, I saw Professor X, side of head, face, and that voice is you can't not have that. If I go into that film and I don't see Professor X, I'm going to be absolutely shocked just because who did that voice so well? That's the answer I would want to know.
Right? It was very good.
Exactly. If someone did it that wasn't him, I would genuinely be beyond shocked. So the bigger question then added on to the Illuminati is this a Professor X variant in the form of, is it the one that we've seen in the X-Men films? Or, which I kind of would love, but it could also very well be a variant, since we know variants have the ability to also look just like us, along with looking completely different. So that's an additional question you have to ask about this.
Yeah, I do want to answer your question about whether or not I think it's Professor X from the X-Men movies that Fox did. But before I do that, I do have a theory about how you were talking about the Illuminati and whether or not they were from our MCU. I'm wondering, and I could be wrong because I'm not 100% caught up on researching the Illuminati in the comics quite yet. That's something I'm going to obviously be doing as the movie gets closer, but my understanding on a base level is that they're kind of made up, or the group is made up of the best and brightest, if you will, of the heroes. So that's why the roster has included, obviously, Professor X, Tony Stark, Reed Richards. I believe Black Panther is typically on that roster as well, among others. All brilliant, wonderful men, right? So I'm almost wondering if they're almost like, and you're going to hate me for saying this, if they're a TVA-like entity, because I'm wondering if they're so smart that they actually truly understand the concept of the multiverse in a way that I think even perhaps the Ancient One didn't. I think she was scratching the surface with all the knowledge she had from Dormammu and, tapping into the evil, dark, cosmic energy that she was. I think she had a base level understanding. But I think the Illuminati is one of the few entities that has other than the TVA really, that has a full breadth of knowledge about the multiverse. And I wouldn't be shocked if now that Loki and Sylvie blew up the TVA, now the Illuminati is stepping in almost as a reality safeguard, because they're not upset about Strange messing with magic. That's what he does. they're upset about him breaking reality.
Right.
And so I think they almost, because they they feel that they understand, and maybe they do, the laws of reality and time and multiverse better than really anyone else, again, besides potentially the TVA. Unclear to me in my own theory if they know about the TVA. I haven't gotten that far yet. But maybe they see themselves as the guardians of reality, and that's why Strange gets on their radar due to the events of No Way Home.
No, I really like that theory, because I think something I even had said was based off of, like, Strange is being arrested by them very clearly. And it actually, now that you bring that up, to me parallels Loki being arrested by the TVA and being brought in and everything. So it very much parallels that idea behind it. I mean, he's just as bad, if not worse, than Loki, because Loki didn't even directly mean to create his own timeline and variant, versus Strange quite literally purposely did everything he did because a kid didn't get in college. And so I think that's really interesting. And if Strange is moving throughout multiverses and timelines, as is what I assume the entirety of the Multiverse of Madness is based on, it would make a lot of sense for them to intercept him at some point and be like, yo, my guy, this isn't working. Like, you need to fix whatever you're doing because this is not working. And you did bring up Reed Richards, which a lot of people, I know there's that really zoomed in picture going around the internet with a very little circle on the chest that could be the 4. And I know a lot of people are running with that. I think it would be pretty cool. I would want to see everybody brought in versus just Reed in the Illuminati and whatever that is to say. Because if it's not our Professor X from the other X-Men, it would just kind of be like almost a cameo, essentially. So I would kind of like to see the whole Fantastic Four make their appearance. Or if it's going to be a cameo, the full old Fantastic Four make their appearance.
Gotcha. That makes sense. And I'm tracking with those preferences as well. I think that makes sense. I get confused sometimes when it comes to, like, the cameo is one timeline, and then you have to, like, step back and think, like, just because, Reed Richards is there, and it's the guy from, for example, the early 2000s, like, that doesn't mean that's what he's gonna look like in our universe, so it's, like, it can get a little confusing.
Yeah.
But when you brought up, the debate about who is sitting in the chair, because there's very clearly, I think there's 5 chairs, right? And then there's space for Professor X in the middle, making it a 6-person group. There has been some debate about who that person in the chair, because there's, I think, only one person that's really visible in the chairs.
And I think it's that one. Yeah.
Right. And so there's been some debate about who that person is. I think Reed Richards is definitely one of the front runners that I've seen. I've also seen some people talk about it being Black Panther, which is interesting. That's one way you can get around, obviously, the tragic passing of Chad, is because if it's a different timeline, he doesn't need to be played by Chad.
I will say, to counter that really quick, from what I say this with the biggest grain of salt, just because we literally are looking at a very blown up, blurry picture, and all of us are like, yup. But I will say, the man sitting in the chair is itsy bitsy tiny in the arm, and I think that's why a lot of people think it's Reed Richards, because literally his job is to stretch, so he has that very thin body type just because, like, he literally stretches. So I couldn't, and this is the dumbest reason to be like, it's not Black Panther, but, like, we've seen that the Black Panther clearly embodies a warrior. You're not gonna see a warrior who's as big as a thumb. Like,
I agree with you. I don't know that I think it's Black Panther. I think it would be interesting if Black Panther is definitely one of them.
Yeah.
I don't know that particular body is Black Panther. I'm just going through some of the theories that I've seen online because there has been some debate about it.
Fair.
One of the other ones that I think is really interesting, that for your, stringy arm theory also doesn't work, but could be interesting, is Black Bolt. So for those of you who don't know, he's kind of the king of the Inhumans, and if you don't remember, oh my god, it's gotta be 5 years ago now, they did a show on ABC that was, I believe, supposed to exist within the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. universe, and it did not go over very well, but it was supposed to be about the first family of the Inhumans, and ever since then, there's been this kind of sentiment that Marvel is stepping back from Inhuman storylines. Ms. Marvel is supposed to be an Inhuman, and there's rumors going around that they're taking that away from her origin story because of all of the things that kind of, transpired with that show. Not to get too deep into other lore here, but Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. has a very strong Inhuman tie, and it's a very important storyline to one of the main characters and her identity, and it overarches many seasons in that show. I say all that to say, Inhumans have existed, and it would be a great way, if they were to bring in Black Bolt, it would be a great way to tie in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. to maybe fix what people don't love about the retconning of Kamala Khan's origin story and all of that. And also, you don't necessarily have to acknowledge the Inhuman show. You could reboot it, and now that Marvel's kind of got their TV shows a little more figured out, I think, than they did at that time, it could be really interesting. So, again, based on the stringy arm theory, it's probably not him because Black Bolt's a very large man.
Yeah.
But I would not be upset if he was occupying one of the other chairs of the Illuminati. Not sure if 100% if that's comic accurate to have him in there. I'm assuming it is because, he came out as a rumor, but that's definitely something we can check on for you guys. And when we do our official predictions episode, we'll give you guys a lineup for sure. But that was one that I don't know that it is him in that particular photo, but would be very interested to see him as part of that roster. And then to go back to your original question, all the way back about Professor X and whether we think it is the Professor X that we'd seen in the Fox iteration of the character both times in the early 2000s and the most recent, I guess they are all considered, I'm not really familiar, as familiar as I should be.
Don't hurt yourself trying to know that timeline.
I know. I guess I need to catch up on it if he's in, but TBD on that one. I'll get back to you guys on how that goes.
Well, the X-Men timeline is complicated.
Yes.
For those of you who are familiar with it, you're aware. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, you're just scared of it. And that's okay.
Yeah. I think I sit in the latter camp, but I am determined to educate myself and be there and be a source. But I do think, to answer your question, I do think it is the Professor X that we had previously seen, because I think it makes the most sense in order to canonize those movies and to make them MCU adjacent the same way that obviously the same way that obviously Toby and Andrew's movies are MCU adjacent. I think that makes the most sense, and I think you can still have him in there, and still then create your own X-Men in the MCU without completely removing those characters and those storylines, because people really, there are people who are hardcore X-Men fans and, who are not, who genuinely enjoy those movies. So I think to completely ignore them, would upset a large contingency of fans. And so I think this is a good way to have that be the original Charles, to have those movies acknowledged, canonized, made MCU adjacent, but yet still leave the room for the MCU and Kevin at the helm to do the mutants the way that they want to do them.
I will say I'm going to be really intrigued now that they did what they did with Evan Peters' Pietro. I am actually really intrigued to see what that's gonna be, because I know it was supposed to be like that gag at the time, but now if they do canonize all of those, I mean, I know they'll probably be like, oh, it's a variant, and that's how they're gonna write some, dare I say, almost like plot holes, because that's really what that's going to be becoming now that, which it feels weird because we knew the multiverse was opening, and so I'm not really sure why they brought him in to be a red herring when if they canonize those movies, he's in those, and I'm not really here for the whole excuse of he's a variant. I think it's sloppy.
Yeah, I agree. I think they painted themselves into a corner with that one. Like, yeah. They tried to be really cutesy and funny, and I get that, like, that show came out before the really extensive reshoots that happened to Doctor Strange, so I'm sure that, some of the story has evolved over time through those reshoots, but there's no way you're going to tell me that Kevin didn't know he was going to canonize those original movies.
That's been a rumor since we knew the multiverse was opening.
Yeah, that's been a rumor since they made the purchase back in 2018 or 2019.
Yeah.
So, it's hard for me to think that Kevin didn't know that was coming, and it's like, it just wasn't strategic. And I think we're so used to Marvel being incredibly strategic, so to watch them, intentionally paint themselves into a corner is very, honestly, just confusing. I don't understand the intention behind it or the thought process, because it doesn't seem like there was one.
Yeah. Well, that's why if they do choose, obviously the Professor X we're going to see is most likely going to be played by the same man who's played him the whole time. That's already been well established. But if we are given the fact that he is not a variant and is instead the Professor X that is in all of the X-Men films, then I am greatly intrigued to understand how they're properly going to explain Pietro, because if it is being written off as a variant, I'm going to be frustrated, and I'm going to put that down on here right now, that I will be really annoyed, because like I said, that's just one of those moments that I think will be really sloppy. We had a couple of them in Endgame too, and post-Endgame trying to fix Endgame, so I'm a little not looking forward to the fact that there are times when Marvel does these big movies, and they're great to look at, and to watch and to get ready for, but sometimes they screw themselves up a little bit in the process, and then it just gets messy. But to kind of go into the second theory while wrapping up this one, you were kind of talking about some people who were sitting in those chairs, and you actually already mentioned Tony Stark, or at least an Iron Man of a sort. And obviously, I think this was already touched on, possibly during our last Multiverse of Madness trailer talk, and if it wasn't, it was definitely mentioned in the blog post talking about the cameos and the possible cameos and what we already know to be confirmed. So I know it was touched on there, but obviously lots of rumors about, I almost called him Tom, or not Tom, Ted, but about Tom Cruise making an appearance, cameo, if you will, as Tony Stark. And now obviously we know there's a Tony in the Illuminati, or at least some sort of Iron Man in the Illuminati, because we see what looks to be a very put together version of the Iron Legion that we see back in Age of Ultron. So, and those are the robots, marching Strange up the stairs. So, to me, that's a very clear way of saying there is a confirmation that there is a form of Iron Man here. Will it be Tom Cruise?
I think so. I do.
I wish not.
I'm torn, because it's obviously RDJ is the essence of Iron Man. But, we did do a baby, I wouldn't even call it a deep dive. We skimmed a little bit about, and this kind of goes into one of our later rumors as well, there is a potential for a version of Iron Man that is not the version that we see in our Sacred Timeline MCU, right? That version of Iron Man is not the snarky but lovable billionaire playboy philanthropist that we all love. He's kind of a bad guy. Mm-hmm. And so if we're gonna see Tony Stark be a bad guy, maybe we don't want to see that played by Robert Downey Jr. because we love the lovable Tony, and he's the lovable Tony. So maybe we let Tom Cruise come in and be the jerk Tony, who never stops being a jerk and kind of is a bad guy.
Well, I partially counter that, because if he's not inherently a good guy, and we're right now, for everybody, we're bordering that line between what we were just talking about in theory number one and point number one, and breaking into point number two, which we'll disclose fully in a second here. But my only thought is, if he is to be kind of a villain, would they let him in the Illuminati?
That's a good question. Probably not.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's tough.
Yeah.
It is, because there's so many different, obviously you guys know this, so many different versions of every character in the comics. They could have almost a completely different personality depending on who's writing them, or something weird that happens to them on a strange alien planet, and the worm gets, I'm stealing from Star Wars, but a worm gets inside their brain and completely changes, who they are as a person. I'm sure that happened in Marvel Comics as well.
There's been some weirder things.
Truly. So there's so many different versions that can be pulled from at any one time, and it's definitely very difficult to isolate, which one you think it could be, especially if, you're like us and we don't hardcore read the comics. We dabble and we do our research, but we don't, buy every new issue that comes out. So, and, not even to mention God, what is it now? Like 70 years of back catalog. So there's a lot of material to go through and a lot of potential storylines. So it can be very, very difficult to isolate which one exactly, you think that they're going to pull inspiration from, and then they're going to pull inspiration from it, but might not go completely line, obviously not line for line, but even beat for beat, they're going to take it and they're going to twist it. Yeah. So that makes it, it's a double layer of confusion. It's difficult.
Yeah. So we'll table that. That's the thought of, there's a Tony. We don't know who the Tony is, but we have to assume this one's a good guy. But now, moving right into probably the second, I wouldn't say the second biggest, but one of the biggest theories, therefore, what we want to talk about, is in the trailer, we see someone who essentially looks like Captain Marvel, looks like she's got a lot of the essence of Captain Marvel, and there are rumors that it could essentially be one of three people, because it very clearly it's not Captain Marvel.
It's not, well, let's say it this way, it's not Carol Danvers.
Yeah, like at least ours. We have Monica, we have Maria, both Rambos, and we have, which is why I said that our last conversation would bleed perfectly into this, Superior Iron Man. Now, I'm a personal believer in it being Maria. That's who I believe, and follow me with this thought. I don't think it'd be Monica. If we're moving through the multiverse, you have to assume things are different. I don't know why she would be someone, like, I just don't think this is the appearance of her as a full superhero that we need.
You think they're gonna wait until the Marvels to introduce her fully?
Yeah.
That's fair.
Because I just think it wouldn't do her justice to just randomly kind of bring her in to be going through a multiverse, especially because then it wouldn't be our Maria, because she's not needed in this by itself, like
Monica. It wouldn't be our Monica?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Jesus. Monica. Yes. Every time I just said Maria, it was all supposed to be Monica.
Too many M names. It's difficult.
It is. And they're both the Rambos, so then in my brain, I'm not even like, it's just like, not coming out right. So I don't see it being Monica at all. I just think it's illogical for where her character's going. We obviously know she's going into the Marvels and she's going in a Secret Invasion. So I think it makes more sense to keep her there. She does have the tie to Wanda, but I just don't think it logically makes sense cosmically. The reason I don't think it's Superior Iron Man is for the dumbest reason, but if you really look at that image, that is not a white man. and I think a lot of people on the internet have already been pointing that out as well, and like, you really look at that and you think it's Tom Cruise, because it's not. And so I also, besides all of this like nitty gritty thing, I truly think that it's Maria, because the multiverse is about things happening differently. That's the whole point of What If, right? Well, what if it's just as easy that Maria got in that jet that day, and she got that her entire storyline happened the exact same as Carol's, that she took Carol's spot. Because what was the whole first episode of What If about? So that for me is why I 100% will stand behind thinking that is Maria Rambeau essentially being Captain Marvel instead of Carol.
Yeah, I have to agree with you for all the reasons you said, and I actually tweeted I think the day the trailer came out, I was like, how cool is it that we got What If? Because now we have a framework for understanding how these multiverses can vary from one another. So we can say, hey, that's Maria Rambeau. What's her what if moment? What's her one moment that changes everything? And to your point, I too agree. It's, how easy is it to swap Carol out for her in that plane and have everything happen the exact same way?
Exactly.
I mean, it's in terms of complication, it's incredibly simple. So I too think it's Maria for that reason, and that's pretty awesome. I'm really excited to see that. I think she could be really, really fun.
Yeah, I'm excited to see in what context we see her in.
Yeah.
Moving forward. I mean, in the movie, not so much that I think there'll be more necessarily to come. But then we have kind of an interesting one, and this kind of also could kind of tie in with the idea of What If. I think we have to, okay, let me say this. The next three are all going to tie into What If in some way, but in different ways. So our next big one coming from the trailer is that Strange and America Chavez look to be falling throughout multiverses, including a cartoon multiverse. This one's cool because for me, first off, it doesn't look like What If's cartoon. However, it opens the possibility that What If's cartoon could be pulled into this. Because if we've seen one cartoon, who's to say another multiverse they're falling in and out of is not another What If?
And not to mention, I know we're going to get into this later, so I don't want to bleed too far into it now, but we see characters from What If come into live action.
Yeah.
So why can't we have it go the other way?
Yeah. If
we're going animated to live action, why can't we go live action to animated? I think that's very much a possibility.
Exactly. So, and this might have been something that if you weren't really watching the trailer very closely, might have missed, but it's when Strange and America Chavez are kind of holding on to each other. They very clearly look like they're falling, and they break glass at some point, which we will also kind of get into in the very last theory, because there's a lot in that last theory and point, which is why it's the last one, because there's a lot to that one to unpack. But they essentially, through that broken glass, it looks very 90s cartoon, 90s, early 2000s, which immediately I thought of the X-Men and the Spider-Man TV shows from that time frame, the ones that even like we sat here growing up on. Immediately, that is what went through my brain.
Yeah, I actually didn't catch this cartoon thing, so I'm really glad you brought this up because I totally missed it. So good job, Kate.
It's hard to. Someone's done a still by still. And that was the only way I noticed it. You don't really notice it.
Okay, because I saw them breaking up, and, they almost look cubicle-like, and so I saw that, but I didn't catch kind of the change in medium. But I think if I had to choose between the two options you gave, which is the Spider-Man and the X-Men, was it X-Men 93 or 97? I would have to go X-Men.
97, I think.
I think so, too. I would have to go X-Men 97 because that's the show they're rebooting. And so I think it's interesting then that you're almost not soft sounding, but you're bringing that, universe back just before it comes back onto your screen with new content. So I think that makes the most sense, just even from a step back, take a look in what's in the pipeline way. And also it could just be interesting, knowing that we have an X-Man, I guess that's the singular of X-Men. We have an X-Man in Professor X in live action, right?
Yeah.
Almost virtually confirmed at this point within this movie. So then it could be cool then to show a direct variant of that character in an animated version within the same movie. So, my money's on X-Men 97, and it kind of being a backdoor into that reboot of that show versus, the Spider-Man that we grew up watching.
Well, and it can also be and I would agree with that, especially because I think we did a lot with Spider-Man already.
And he's coming back animated as well, but it's our Peter and not a reboot of that show.
Yeah, so I think there's an aspect to that kind of is we don't need to bring too much of that into here. I know there's been rumors about Toby making a reappearance and everything. Right now, not the focus, but I know that is one of the rumors, and we can go into that a little more in the predictions episode when we're a little closer to the film. But I would have to go with the X-Men. I think it would also be interesting to kind of something you brought up even just before is how we've seen the What If characters seemingly being able to come forward. And, if that follows, it could also be an interesting way to introduce a different form of X-Men into the MCU if they so choose. So that could also be a way to bring in a whole team without even needing to think anything of it. They just kind of were like, I'm gonna jump through this portal. So I think it could be really interesting. But yeah, that's been something that has been getting pointed out, and I'm glad that I sat there and watched that still, if you really slowed down and watched a still by still, and I was like, thank you, because I never would have seen it either. But yeah, so that's why I was like, this one's going to relate to What If in its own way. Now the next one relates to What If directly, and that is Zombie Wanda and Zombie Strange.
Yes. How pumped are you? Because that was your favorite episode of What If.
I know. I love the Marvel Zombies comics. I love to look at I just think they're so cool. That What If episode takes I'm not gonna lie to you. I had to rewatch Stranger's episode just so I could feel comfortable talking about Multiverse of Madness after seeing, like, what we've seen, because I don't really remember any other episode except the zombie episode. It's the only one for me that I'm like, yes. And so it's what's interesting is not only do we appear to be getting the zombified versions of them, Strangers actually looks like the zombified version of him, but the version of him that turns evil?
Yeah.
If that makes sense. It, like, look, because he doesn't look like Evil Strange. We see Evil Strange already. But, like, the version of him that's got, like, the weird animals coming out of him and everything looks zombified, which is strange. Pun intended. And
oh, man. But
I know. And then we obviously see, we see Wanda, and we see her with the blood dripping down her, but then there is a scene in, I don't think it was the one that showed right, or that came out right before the game started. It was the TV spot one, I believe.
Yeah. So, guys, really quick, I know we're really far into this episode, but just to clarify, there were 2 semi-different spots that came out Super Bowl night. So there's the one that everybody's freaking out online, but if you watched the game live, there was another spot, and I would say the majority, probably 85 to 90% of the footage is the same, but there are a few pieces of footage that are added into the spot that was live on TV.
Yeah.
So we'll link everything out for you guys in the show notes, but just wanted to quickly clarify that there were 2 slightly different spots that came out on Super Bowl Sunday.
Yes, and the one I'm referring to is the one I believe was the one during the game.
I think
and that's
right.
the one where you see more of what looks to be a zombie Wanda. And it's not just the blood on the face, like, she's
kind of limping. She's not really, like...
Yeah. I'm so happy. Like, and I think it's interesting because, like I said, 10 minutes ago, these last 3 points especially are tying right into What If directly, and this is one of them. Especially seeing her as a zombie, she was pretty much the main antagonist, which I love, because when we get to our last point, there's quite a bit to talk about on that. But to me, that is another version of Wanda, which we'll get to again in the last point. But I think it's interesting to be able to see some of this coming together in ways I don't think I expected it to. It's also supposed to be a horror film, so I'm not a big horror person, although I watch it and then I get scared and then I am mad and then I watch it anyway. So I'm excited. I'm excited, and I really like where this is going.
Yeah, I'm actually so curious. So we've actually seen the zombie motif even before What If. Mm-hmm. Like, we obviously saw zombie Iron Man, and I believe zombie Cap as well in No Way Home, or was it just Tony? Because I feel like we saw zombie Cap somewhere as well.
We did see him in What If, but I know we saw, like, yeah, we did see the zombie Iron Man. I don't know if we saw Cap, if it was more of just, like, Cap dead. Not inherently the Walking Dead.
Gotcha. Okay, I couldn't remember, but I know we saw Zombie Tony. Mm-hmm. So we've seen zombies in live action before, theoretically. But it was an illusion by Mysterio. Mm-hmm. So now, like, I'm gonna be really curious now that we've seen some other characters in the zombified form. Is it just Strange and Wanda that we're going to see? Because there were a lot of other characters that were zombies in that episode. Obviously, Cap, which you mentioned.
I'm really glad you brought that up.
Yeah. There's, like, a lot of opportunity there for some real zombies.
Now, if you want to hear my personal want out of this...
Go for it.
I'll share it. I actually think it... Okay. I know we'll get into this more in the predictions episode, especially talking about another slew of cameos. And as much as I really would love to see Chris Evans back as the Human Torch, I would love for him to don his Captain America suit and be zombified. I would love that to be his thing.
That'd be really cool.
Yeah. Like, I think it's really awesome, and I think it's cool because, especially in the What If episode, like, Bucky has that, or he has that moment where he literally has to kill Cap, and then he's like, well, I guess this was the end of the line. Which, like, yikes. The writers really were like, yikes, I'm gonna hurt you.
I know, that one hurt.
Yeah, that one was, like, really personal to me. I took that personally. but I think it would be really interesting to kind of bring him back. And that's how they do it. Especially because at this point, they haven't really confirmed Cap's whereabouts on whether or not old Cap is dead or not. So I think it would be kind of that ode to be like, well, yes, but no. So I think he'd be cool. I think it'd be interesting to see. Well, and I don't think they'll do this just because he's still very involved in the MCU and he'd be unrelated. But I'd love to see Anthony Mackie's The Falcon, Sam Wilson making his appearance, because he was one of the big zombified ones in the What If episode as well. So I think that could be cool. And I would actually like to see Vision make an appearance. Obviously, he can't be a zombie. But he had played a big part in the What If episode, literally feeding his wife.
Yeah, when you brought up Zombie Wanda, I was going to ask if you thought that meant in that universe we were going to get a live Vision, and it would basically be somewhat of an extension of that particular universe we saw in What If.
Well, and what's interesting to me is if you look at the background of where she appears to be, and this could just be my thought off of what I saw, and maybe I need to look closer, who knows, but it kind of looks like a facility. It doesn't look like she's in like a house. And where was she in What If? A facility.
No, I was going to say, I too thought the background and the environment looked very similar to where she was in What If. Like, originally I was like hospital, but then I looked at it again and I was like, wait a minute. She was in that, like, I think it was an army base. She was in some kind of military.
Yeah, like a bunker or something.
Yeah. Like, I was like, it could be a hospital or it could be a military facility like what she was doing in What If.
Yeah.
And that's when I was like, oh, Vision.
Yeah. So I really love this, and I know it's not going to be the main point of the film, but Marvel, if you're hearing and listening to me, please give me a Marvel Zombies eventually. Thank you.
Aren't they doing one? I thought they were doing one.
Yeah, but I want a live action. I want to live fully through it, you know? But yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. And, you know, while we're on the topic of Wanda, let's move right into this main last point, since she is everything and is the main last point. So, I mean, am I wrong?
No, you're not.
So, she is an interesting character in this film, because something we said from the get-go of the last predictions episode was, there's obviously various versions of Strange. We, from the beginning already, was saying, so, like, give us credit for it. But we were telling everyone, as we should have, and we're glad that we were, that there were likely multiple Wandas. And we've been confirmed this, at least especially with the fact that we've had two sitting in the exact same room as one another.
In the Westview house,
Yes.
which is a whole nother layer of crazy pain.
Yeah. So the question now starts to boil down to how many Wandas are there? Now, for me, I can never have enough, but it comes to question, and here's where we're going to kind of almost count them off. So we see it in this trailer, and we see it in the first one. It's the only version we primarily had seen in the first one, but we are still given the appearance of it in this trailer when Strange, supposedly, I'm doing air quotes, goes and sees Wanda and asks her about the multiverse. And she actually, in this trailer, tells him, you know, Vision had theories. He had his theories. But we see her in the garden, living her best life, or so we thought. Then we see the very iconic line that Wanda delivers in the trailer, and might go down as one of the most iconic lines now in the history of the MCU. And when she's saying it to Strange, in which the line has to do with, you know, you break the rules, you become a hero, I break them, I become the villain, it doesn't seem fair. If you look at Strange, he's wearing the same outfit, and the background is the same trees that he is when he's talking to Wanda in the garden. But everything is just red, obviously, and she's in her Scarlet Witch garb. Well, everything being red to me seems her powers are running somewhere.
Yeah.
So I've seen people calling that an illusion. I've seen that it could be different versions of her already from the get-go. What are your thoughts?
My personal thought is she Westviewed again, but just herself. Like, but she created Westview. She didn't even know she created Westview.
Yeah.
This time, she's like, I created that thing, and I could live in it peacefully, and I could have what I wanted. Now I know how I did it.
Yeah.
I can just recreate it, but this time I don't have to hurt anyone, and I can just live in peace, and people can leave me alone.
Yeah.
So, my personal thought is, she Westviewed herself to just deal with the pain, because she's, like, in denial and can't face it.
Mhm.
I mean, versus, like, them having two different Wandas having two different conversations.
Right.
That seems a little more far-fetched in my personal opinion, but I'd be curious to know what you think.
I kind of am down the road of your first thought, because the thing is obviously you have to make the assumption the regular, dressed in her regular clothes Wanda comes first, and, Scarlet Witch Wanda comes second. And I actually, what the lighting reminds me of the most is when she's in the battle with Agatha,
yes,
and her runes show. And for me, my thought is, Strange is a magician. He knows. She might have chaos magic, which is just literally, I was going to be like chaos. Yeah.
No.
But it's its own just breed of magic, essentially. She's pretty much the only person who practices it. And so while it is different, it's not unable for someone who also practices magic to sense it. And I very much wonder if he tries to do magic, and in the meantime, her rune, because obviously he realizes he can't, she makes an appearance as Scarlet Witch, her runes come out to show, and that, so I follow your theory on kind of making her own Westview, and then in the meantime, it allows Strange to not be able to touch her, pretty much, in that bubble. So, and I mean, and I think this is something, people even said after WandaVision, the fact that no one can feel the magic she's doing, so it would make sense that she essentially put walls around herself, because she is doing dark magic. And, Elizabeth Olsen predicted this from Age of Ultron already, saying how she'd really love to watch Wanda go crazy. Create her two kids, lose them, go crazy looking for them. And we've gone directly down that route. So I really think that, to your point, there's almost her own Westview, and she got Strange almost trapped in there because he is defenseless against her in her runes. So I agree I don't see it being two different Wandas in that scene, unless there is a element of, and I don't remember if this was accurate or not, but I feel like someone did mention seeing Eye of Agamotto somewhere in the trailer. I have no confirmation of that, so I'm not going to throw it out.
I think you're right. I think it exists. It just does not have the time stone in it anymore. Because I think people were talking about how he used to wear middle chest, and now it's like moved up closer to the neckline of the cloak.
Okay. Well, my only thought is, and this is kind of a question for the masses, I guess, is, I mean, different multiverses and timelines would still have stones, so wouldn't there still be a possibility that there's an Eye of Agamotto that has the time stone?
Yes. I guess I'm confused. Why are you bringing that up?
Because my thing is maybe there's also an aspect of time travel.
I see.
If you wanted to run down that theory of Wanda being two different Wandas.
Okay. I was having trouble connecting the dots now, but I follow you now.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify before I started saying it, and then I was like, if there wasn't an Eye of Agamotto, and then I was like, this could get awkward.
He might not have been wearing it in that particular scene, but I know he does still have it at certain points in the trailer.
Okay. Yeah, so my thought just being, we also don't know how quickly he goes to Wanda, so, I mean, if he's already been kind of going in and out of different multiverses from the get-go, he could have easily run into himself with the Eye of Agamotto. It also could not be our Strange. Who knows? Yeah,
I was going to say that too. I was like, do we know? I mean, it looks like the thing with the different Wandas is they don't look different, or they do look different. Like, you can tell, like...
They do a little.
Yeah, like, one obviously has the black fingers because of the dark hold, and she's in the full Scarlet Witch.
Her hair.
Yeah.
Her hair changes. Because when you mentioned the one in Westview, in the house in Westview, one of them has her dark hair.
Yeah. So I would say there's, like, physical differences between the wand, but they're like more subtle, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you have to pretty much know the character pretty well, like the different hair, and then obviously there's like the one that's dressed like the Scarlet Witch and not. But like, that doesn't mean that those are the only two. Whereas, like, I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, Stranges, I feel like look distinctly different. Like, yeah. You know what Evil Strange looks like he has the kind of raggedy beard, he has the dark circles. Then there's the Strange with the long hair, who I know has a name that I can't remember at this current moment. So they all look different.
Yeah.
So I guess my point is, like, this Strange looks like our Strange, but I guess I'm wondering if, like, there are other versions of him that look as similar to our Strange as Wanda's look as similar to our Wanda. Who knows?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm confused.
Exactly. And the thing is you're not gonna know. So that's why it's like, I'm running with the theory that that's likely going to be our Wanda just, in her own little place.
But then now I have another question for you, since we're talking about multiple Wandas, and we're obviously tying this very, very strongly back to WandaVision, because we wouldn't be having this movie without WandaVision.
Exactly.
And originally they were supposed to come out back to back.
Yeah.
So I guess my question is, the Wanda in our universe, is she the good one or the bad one? Because I originally thought she was the good one because of the apple orchard scene. But now it looks like she's the bad one because she's telling Strange, well, you make a mistake and you're cool. I make a mistake, I'm punished. But then if the good one is our Wanda, does that mean, and I'm going to go all the way back on you guys, does that mean that the Wanda in the end credit scene of WandaVision is not our Wanda? Like, is that our Wanda, or is it not our Wanda? I need to know because it feels very important to know.
I make the assumption it is, because I'm not quite sure where Wanda would be fully welcomed at the time, because, I mean, and I think this comes down to things that have been mentioned multiple times, but nobody seems to check in on Wanda after the events of Endgame.
Correct.
So I'm not sure if she, it doesn't seem that she has the ability to go to someone after Westview. It would make a lot of sense that she isolates herself. And actually, I also want to kind of almost go against your thought about how the Wanda that we saw in the apple orchard, apples can be a very symbolic thing. And if you look at apple symbolism in a lot of things, they tend to actually be a negative thing because they're usually poisonous.
Poison or temptation, right?
Yeah. So, and as the easiest example for those of you, if you want an example of what I'm referring to, you could just think of Snow White, obviously, is probably one of the most well thought of when someone thinks of a poisonous apple. So, there isn't to say that there is necessarily that was ever going to be a good Wanda. I think the thing is Wanda has always been, since Age of Ultron, so pretty much all her life, on this very precarious tipping point. And there were times, such as Civil War, where she was kind of leading towards the Avengers, and then what happened at the beginning of Civil War, where she inadvertently killed people, tipped her a little bit back down towards a very emotional and turmoil area. But then, back through the rest of Civil War, then she was fine. Infinity War was hard. Pretty much the girl's been through everything that you can give her. So, on top of that, and being on this tipping point, I would say secluding yourself with a very magical and dark book and reading it and realizing you have all of this magic within you and that essentially you were always meant to be a dark being. Like, there was nothing inherently supposed to be good about the Scarlet Witch by the end, in all the comic books, she's the craziest.
She's, right up there with Jean Grey.
Yeah,
in terms of just, actual, lose it and break the world while you're losing it. They're like the poster children.
Yeah, her magic essentially becomes a weapon for her in not a good way. And so, when you seclude yourself in the mountains and you're reading a magical dark book, it's very possible she sat there and was continuously corrupting herself.
Oh, for sure. And I think we see that manifesting in the Dark Fingers. I guess I just want to play the devil's advocate of, now we're toying with the idea of so many Wandas.
Yeah.
I think we all made the assumption it was that Wanda from WandaVision, but can we safely, with 100% certainty, make that assumption now? I think the answer is no.
Yeah, I would still say it likely is.
I agree.
Yeah. My understanding is he's going to her. I would think if he's going to her, he's likely going to her pretty early on. So I would think that's hers. I think when we start seeing everything blow up, and actually there's something else I want to talk about referring to Wanda, and we see even the Westview thing and everything, that's when we can get into a little bit of a gray area. I don't think Wanda is inherently bad. I think there's just darkness growing within her. Because, and there has been some rumors about her reaching her demise in this film, and to be fair, if she's a villain, I could get where they're coming from. But I think it would be bold.
Counterpoint to that, I'm seeing that she's in I Am Groot, which is just like a really random franchise for her to be in.
I also saw that. I don't think Wanda is going to die. I think she's reaching a culminating point of she needs to pick if she's going to be a good guy or a bad guy, but I don't see them doing away with her completely in this. I think she's an interesting character that people want to see the intricacies of her more. And I mean, in the best of ways, she's really always been defined by Vision, who's been almost her moral compass. And ever since that, I don't think we've gotten to see Wanda truly for who she is. So I would really like to see more of the character in herself. Like, I want to see what more could come. So I think this is the movie on deciding she can no longer be on that tipping point. It's going to be she's either a villain or she's a hero. And who knows, maybe seeing all of the things she sees tips her purposely one way or the other. But I think what's interesting, and I want to get into this really quick, this is the last big thing about Wanda, is, and this was the thing I brought up during point number 3 and I wanted to hold off on, was there's this glass shattering kind of aspect. And there's a very specific scene with Wanda seemingly surrounded by these mirrors and glass, which looks suspiciously like the Watcher from What If.
Mm-hmm.
And when Ultron and... who was Ultron battling? The Watcher. And I was like, wait. When Ultron and the Watcher were smashing quite literally through timelines, it was this breaking aspect. And this is what we see in this trailer. So now how the heck did Wanda end up in the little, I don't even know, little cubby that the Watcher lives in?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have an idea.
Okay.
I'm stealing hardcore from What If on this one. So, Ultron was able to do it when he became aware of he, reached a level of knowledge where he was aware of the Watcher, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's how he was able to break the glass and hop in and go from, multiverse to multiverse.
Well, he also, essentially killed everybody on every single Earth, so it was so quiet he could hear the Watcher talking.
Quick question, sorry, this has been a minute since I've watched this episode. Was this, when he found the Watcher, was that before he was going multiverse to multiverse? Yes, because he had killed every planet.
Yeah.
Right? He'd killed the beings on every planet. Okay. So I guess what I'm saying is, yes, he hurt him because it was quiet because he killed, half the universe. Or whatever, just, I think all of the universe at that point because they weren't robots, so they weren't good enough. But I also think there's this element of he had so much power at that point that he was able to, almost, reach a higher plane of being, if you will.
That's fair.
And I think that through perhaps Wanda's practice of magic with the Darkhold, she might also be able to reach a similar higher plane of being, therefore making her aware of the Watcher and aware of his place within the multiverse, hence how she gets in there. I'm just putting that out there. I think that there's a possibility that could be a thing.
I'm gonna annoy you so bad right now.
Great.
And I'm gonna annoy everybody listening. Theoretically speaking, if she enters that area where the Watcher is, right? Well, you know who else is in there?
No.
Just in their own little...
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No.
I'm just saying, and for those of you who don't know what I'm saying, theoretically, this Doctor Strange who has all the weird animal magic, and Ultron Vision, or Vision Ultron, whichever one you prefer, are fighting endlessly in a little orb thing. And I'm almost... Now, I don't watch What If often. So it's been a while. But I'm almost 100% sure that there's, a little bit of an ominous take to it when I'm pretty sure it's the Watcher who says, as long as you stay in here, you guys will be trapped in an endless battle. But, as long as they stay in there...
So are you telling me that you think that this movie is going to release Ultron Vision on the world? Because I've never been genuinely scared during a Marvel movie or show. That one, okay, I probably have at some point. but I have never, I don't think, ever reached a level of fear that I did than when I was watching that show.
Yeah.
That particular episode scared me more than zombies, scared me more than Thanos with the gauntlet, scared me more than anything we've ever seen. That gave me the heebie-jeebies. It scared the crap out of me.
Yeah, well, I'm not saying necessarily it's going to happen, but I am saying if we're running with the theory that she's essentially breaking into the little mirror world that the Watcher chills in, and the Watcher's in there, who else is in there, you know?
I hate that you brought that up. Could you not have just, I'm, not going to be able to sleep now thinking about how potentially we're getting an Ultron vision. Nope.
I mean, I was more so thinking about Doctor Strange, because I'm like, yeah, that one had a redemption, but what if when he, gets out of there, he's like, this is stupid. I had no reason I should have been trapped in there in this endless battle. What if he has a change of thought again?
Yeah, but he kind of, went in there willingly in order to sacrifice himself. I feel like it's hard if he, kind of saw the light, if you will. He went in there willingly and was like, I made this mess, or I made a mess. I'm gonna clean it up,
I mean, that's fair. But what if he gets broken out of it and sees that there's a mess anyway? That he did all that for nothing?
I mean, he protected the world from Ultron vision, which is arguably worse than what our Doctor Strange did. Let's put that out there.
Okay, but the collapse of the multiverse would just mean everyone dies anyway.
Yeah, but not at the, vicious hands of... I'm sorry, but to me, there's nothing worse in the MCU than Ultron vision.
Because I'm just saying, it's physically, Doctor Strange collapsed the multiverse and essentially implodes all of the worlds together and the timelines together. He will kill everybody.
Is that what they're fighting? 'Cause I guess I'm not really sure.
I mean, that's what I got from all of it.
Is that the quote-unquote endgame here? That, or is it just, what does the nebulous term breaking of reality actually mean? Someone give me a definition. What does that mean? What does it look like? What are the tangible consequences for the Sally and the Jack and the Peter on the street who are not superhumans but just going about their daily life? What does it mean for them? I'm genuinely asking the question.
I mean, if you really look at this and we open that possibility that she ends up there, there's also the possibility, although, another theory.
Oh no.
That just popped into my brain. No, not as bad. But what if she, okay, so at this point, I'm almost accepting I'm gonna see the Watcher. I feel like it just happens.
I don't know how you don't have the Watcher in this movie.
Yeah, me neither. Especially if you're going to tie in What If at this point to the way that it's tied in, you have to assume he's there. So, theoretically speaking, what if, because she looks panicked while she's in there, she's trapped in there?
I was actually, when I watched the trailer, that was my initial reaction was, oh crap, she got on the Watcher's poo-poo list, and he put her in there.
Well, to be fair, she probably was the initial breaking of part of the multiverse by just her unleashing her power to begin with. And then on top of Loki and then on top of Strange, who just added some of the worst cracks to it. It was when you already have a partially shattered window, it's already just gonna get worse. So I think that...
Remember what we said? Wanda, Loki, and Sylvie opened it. Strange, and I think actually I caught this in the trailer this time. Wong specifically says that Strange opened the door between the multiverses. He specifically says that, which means our late night water bottle diagram was right.
And that's what I like to hear. I like being right.
And actually, this is going to sound incredibly self-centered, but I was going back and listening to some of our episodes about Loki. Specifically, episodes 1 and 2 of Loki, not our episodes 1 and 2, because we're a little off because of the predictions. Which, by the way, just a quick little aside, some of our predictions were literally so wrong. It was bonkers. I was laughing out loud. I was like, oh my.
I didn't think they'd make Loki fall in love with himself.
I haven't even gotten that far. I mean, he literally, end of episode 2 is when he goes in the door with Sylvie. We're not even, starting with Silky yet. Whew. But, anyway, so in our episode about Loki episode 2, we were talking about nexus points, and how that relates to WandaVision and all that stuff. So I'm now adding on my theories, and truthfully, I think I'm going to rewatch WandaVision, Loki, and What If before this movie, because otherwise I think I'm going to be very lost. But I'm now wondering if essentially what Strange has created in these doorways between the multiverse, but doorways between the universe, is nexus points, right? I guess it makes sense. Nexus between them. So then if Wanda created a nexus, what if she herself created one baby little tangible thing because of her chaos magic, one little baby doorway, and that's how we got the multiverse for like a minute, because she's powerful enough to do that, but then when she shut down Westview, she closed it back. So I guess I'm wondering, like, now I'm going back on our thoughts, like, yes, I think it was her and Sylvie and Loki to permanently open it, but I guess I'm wondering now if, like, she did a little baby opening and connecting herself and then closed it when she, like, shut down Westview. I don't know, just a thought. It's kind of random, but I just was listening to that today and I was like, wait a minute.
Well, and that's why I think everybody thought Pietro was who Pietro was.
Yeah.
And then when they were like, he's not, everyone was like, well, now I'm confused. Thank you.
When I still keep waiting, there's a part of me that keeps waiting for them to walk that back. Like, I don't know how they would do it, but, like, what if, okay, this is, like, going all the way back to WandaVision, but I feel like it does have some ties in here because multiverse. What if Agatha was lying? Like, what if she, like, put a spell so that he thinks he's Ralph Boner, and it's really Quicksilver from the Fox universe, and he just doesn't even know?
I'm still pretty thrown off on how she was able to give him, like, faux powers.
Yeah.
Because, to be fair, like, I get it had to do with, like, the necklace or whatever, but I was like, how is Agatha, who I understand to be a powerful witch, like, how did she give someone else power? Like, it just felt weird. So I'm intrigued.
And I also think Marvel knows when they've messed up because the fans tell them.
Yeah.
You know, when they're unhappy. And I think the fans have been incredibly vocal about how upsetting that was and just, like, really annoying. And so I wouldn't be shocked if they find a way to be like, boop, I got you guys.
Well, and that ties all the way back to what I even said at the beginning of this episode, where I was like, I would love to understand if they're going to canonize that stuff, what the heck they're going to do there.
Yeah.
I'd love to understand.
Yeah. It has to be walked back. It has to be.
Yeah. But actually, you bring up a great point. For all y'all listening, we have about 2 months before the Multiverse of Madness comes out. Start your rewatches of WandaVision. Start your rewatches of, I'm so sorry, Loki.
Caitlin,
start
don't
if
be
you
so
haven't.
hateful.
I will be, and I don't mind. And start or rewatch, because I know a lot of people chose not to watch What If, but start or rewatch What If, especially the zombie episode, which I think is around 5 or 6.
It was somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, I believe Doctor Strange did the episode right before it, so actually you can watch both those episodes. And just to be safe, watch the last 2. You never know.
I would actually argue 7, 8, 9.
What is 7?
I thought 7 was the Vision Ultron one only 8, 9? Because I thought 7 was also leading up to that.
No.
Oh.
8 was all about how he essentially took over the world.
Oh.
And then 9 was the battle.
See, I think in my head, I thought 7 was about how he took over, and then 8 and 9 was the battle.
No. So, I think it's 5, 6, and 8, 9, or it's 4, 5, and 8, 9 that you need to rewatch, specifically if you don't wish to watch all of them. But I recommend watching all of them because
you don't know what's gonna.
If we're already this far in, yeah, if we're this far into the whole of What If, I would just make it a safe bet and watch it all.
And I know you're gonna hate that I'm bringing this up and putting this out on the air, Caitlin, because you saw it, and I know you were incredibly angry. But one of the pieces, and this is the last thing we'll say about the Multiverse of Madness.
Oh, God.
One of the things...
I knew immediately as soon as you said it. I was like, no!
I'm so sorry, but it needs to be said. One of the things that people really did after the trailer came out was blow up the shards. One of the coolest ones was potentially Deadpool, so yay! Yeah. And also, I don't know if you guys saw, this is a quick little anecdote, but I don't know if you guys saw the interview that Ryan Reynolds did about his new movie where someone was like, are you in it? And that man apparently can't lie because he looked so uncomfortable. I've never seen anyone more uncomfortable. I mean, even more so than Andrew Garfield. So it was pretty uncomfortable.
Okay, but Andrew could lie. He was trying his best.
Exactly. But freaking Ryan Reynolds is out here. He's like, I am not going to say anything. And I was like, buddy, like, you might as well just come out and say it. But anyway, so there's the Deadpool shard, and then one of the other shards that people are really zeroing in on is the Captain Carter shield, likely indicating that she's going to be in live action in this movie in some capacity at some point. I say that to say, Katie's talking about potentially only doing, the particular episodes that we pointed out, and I'm sure she'll specify exactly what episodes those are in the blog. There's also, if you revisit our episode on What If, we do list out what episodes are what in our show notes, so that's another quick reference for you if you'd like to go on there and check them out. But, to what Katie was saying, like, you could just go the ones that we already know about and rewatch those, and that's fine. But there are very strong hints that ones that we haven't even talked about are going to be referenced in this movie, so you're probably just better off watching all 9.
Yeah, especially if you didn't watch them the first time. At this point, go watch them. I will say, if you have watched them already, if probably you're in the position to possibly just rewatch the, I think, 4 we mentioned, but if you haven't watched What If at all, definitely, especially because if you're going to be watching 8, 9, you might as well watch all of them since they all tie together at that point. If you have already watched it and you're at least aware of what all the episodes are, definitely you're probably in a position just to rewatch, like the 4 that we mentioned. But yeah, definitely in the next 2 months, start your watch parties, your viewing parties, get your friends. I know I have a roommate who hasn't watched WandaVision, so I'll be sitting here in front of the TV because she cannot come with me to see Multiverse of Madness if she's not seen WandaVision.
It will not make any sense at all.
No. I mean, she also hasn't seen Loki, but I told her, I was like, for now, spare yourself. But she has seen What If, because that was coming out when I moved in, so she got to watch those with me. But yeah, we'll be doing our rewatching of some of those probably starting after tonight, since we have a different show that we need to watch culminate tonight. But those are probably more than 5, but essentially the basis of 5 of the biggest points that have come out of the newest Multiverse of Madness trailers, kind of, that dropped during, and before. Sorry, there's really no way to say this.
Super Bowl Sunday. They came out Super Bowl Sunday.
Yeah, Super Bowl Sunday, yeah. So those are our thoughts on those. Of course, there will be a predictions episode for Multiverse of Madness where we'll go variously in depth through all sorts of other things, but we just want to touch on some of the biggest things we've seen, and it's also possible we'll get a little bit more in another trailer before then anyway.
Yeah, so this has been our super special Multiverse of Madness pre-predictions episode. Yeah, I guess that works. Pre-predictions. That's what we're calling it now. It's been super fun. There's a lot of really great stuff, like Katie said, coming out of these newest trailers, and hopefully we'll get a little bit more footage before the movie comes out. So we're super excited. Less than 70 days to go, guys. Like she said, get your rewatches started so everybody has all the content fresh and ready to go for the movie. And as always, if you are a fan of the show, make sure you're subscribing so that as we get closer and closer, you're ready for our official predictions episode ahead of the movie. And then, of course, our reactions. We do have Moon Knight coming out, so we'll be covering that as well. Weekly episodes to follow the weekly episodes that are coming out on Wednesday nights. So make sure you subscribe so you get all of that content right in your podcast platform of choice. If you're a fan and you want to give us a shout out, please feel free to go ahead and leave us a rating or review. It just helps us feel good and know that you guys are enjoying our content. So super appreciate it if you feel so inclined. You can check us out on our blog, which is one of our central hubs for everything, has great content. Some of the things that we can't remember, while we're recording live, we like to follow up with on the blog so you guys have all the information you need. And it also just has some fun memes and other great content. You can find all of the episodes also on the blog. Last but not least, you can follow us on Spotify where we have playlists for all of the different shows. There is also a playlist for all of the songs across every MCU property that is available on Spotify. So if you're ever in an MCU mood but don't want to watch a movie, you can turn those on and feel the MCU groove while you're doing whatever you're doing.
And lastly, make sure you're following us on our Twitter. It's Let's Talk MFT. For all episodes and blog posts, they are posted there with the link, so just gotta stop there. Also, any theories we have, along with theories or news that are released by others or tweeted by others, are usually retweeted or liked, so you are able to kind of get everything you need in one spot. But as we've now watched this trailer, I think this trailer alone, I can say this, but Marvel just blew your mind, so let's talk about it.
Bye.